can talk to me.
Woman, boss. Never happened in the States. Never.
Not so fast, Tony. It happens, and Vianna Roman is proof. With her curly hair and sweet smile, Vianna Roman looked like she could be a mother who makes tamales and pozole every Thanksgiving. But prosecutors believe the 37-year-old LA native was the de facto boss of a deadly street gang called the Harpies, controlled by her father, Danny Popeye Roman, from his prison cell at California's notorious Pelican Bay State Prison. Development: Pelican Bay State Prison, Crescent City, California, 2011. A young woman enters Pelican Bay State Prison. She's there to visit her dad, but it's more than just a family reunion. It's a business meeting for one of LA's most feared gangs. Vianna Roman is getting instructions from her father, Danny Popeye Roman, a Mexican Mafia leader. After this visit, she'll head out to the streets, running the Harpies in his name. What unfolds next is a story that intertwines family, crime, and power in ways you might not expect. Stick around to see the only pic of Vianna that can be found online. A female Harpy takes flight. Vianna Roman grew up in South Los Angeles, where family business took on a whole different meaning. Her father was a shot caller for the Mexican Mafia, arguably California's most powerful prison gang. Vianna had taken on a unique role in the family business. She'd make regular trips to Pelican Bay State Prison, a supermax facility housing some of California's most dangerous criminals. There, behind bulletproof glass, sat her father. These visits were not about catching up on family gossip. Danny Roman would pass along coded messages, instructions for running the Harpies gang back in South LA. Vianna would memorize every detail and take care of business. So by her 30s, she had become the street boss, and along with her husband, acted as a bridge between her incarcerated father and the gang's daily operations. It's hard to imagine a young woman becoming the conduit for a prison-based criminal empire, but that's what happened. How does someone end up in a role like that? For Vianna, it was a combination of family loyalty and a lifelong exposure to the gang life. Ever since childhood, she'd been immersed in this world, where the lines between family, crime, loyalty, and illegal activity all blurred together. This is where our story really begins. How did a father-daughter duo manage to run one of LA's most feared gangs from behind bars? What kind of power did Danny Popeye Roman wield that he could control the streets from a cell 740 miles away? And what impact did this have on Vianna, caught between her own family and a duty to serve her other family? The story of the Harpies, the Mexican Mafia, and the Roman family's criminal empire is one of power, family, and the far-reaching influence of organized crime. Please take a moment here to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell notification so you won't miss another Crush Unit video. Danny Roman, the man behind bars. Danny Roman's story is about to challenge what you think you know about power and control from behind bars. It all kicked off back in 1985 when he got hit with a life sentence for first-degree murder. Most people would think that's the end of the road, but for Danny, it was just the beginning. 3 years into his sentence, Danny made a move that would change everything. He got inducted into the Mexican Mafia, one, if not the most powerful prison gangs in California. Danny went from being just another convict to a made man, with all the power and responsibility that came with it. From his cell in Pelican Bay State Prison, Danny's influence started to stretch way beyond the prison yard. Locked up in Northern California, he was calling the shots for gangs hundreds of miles away in South LA. And we're not just talking about one gang. Danny was pulling strings for the Harpies, 38th Street, 36th Street, Primera Flats, Playboys, and more. So how did a prisoner in a supermax manage to control the streets of South LA? That's where things get interesting. Enter Vianna, Danny's daughter. She became his trustworthy connection to the outside world. Vianna would make those trips up to Pelican Bay, sit across from her dad, and leave with marching orders for the gangs back home. She definitely wasn't bringing back souvenirs from her trip up north. She was carrying instructions that would shape the criminal landscape of South LA. Danny Roman showed that you don't need to be on the streets to run them. But here's the thing, power like that always comes at a price. And in Danny's case, that price was paid by his family, especially Vianna. While other dads were teaching their kids to ride bikes or helping with homework, Danny was grooming Vianna to be a key player in his criminal empire. That's not exactly the kind of family business most people dream of passing down to their kids. It's a family affair. In South LA, the 25th of each month wasn't your typical payday. For 15 different crews, it was time to pay up to a criminal empire run out of a seemingly ordinary market. Via Mar, Tortilleria y Carniceria on Compton Avenue looked like a nondescript spot for tortillas and meat, but it doubled as the headquarters for a whole different kind of business. Every month, this little market saw $5,000 to $6,000 rolling in from each of the 15 gangs. The 25th was tax day in the underworld. The men and women lining up to pay their dues was like a twisted version of rent day. But the market had an even darker side. Rumor has it that people got dealt with in there. And we're not talking about customer service. The kind of stuff that went down in the back rooms involved tools you definitely wouldn't find next to a meat slicer. The operation didn't stop at the market. They set their sights on the Alameda swap meet, located at the intersection of Alameda Street and Vernon Avenue, turning it into a gold mine of extortion. Vendors learned fast that setting up shop came with a hefty price tag beyond booth rental. Those who couldn't cough up extra cash for protection weren't just risking their jobs, they were putting their lives on the line. The market and swap meet became the nerve center of a wide-reaching criminal network. They weren't selling produce, they were peddling fear. And for a while, business was booming. But you gotta wonder, how long could they keep this brutal operation running before the law caught up? In the end, it all came crashing down. The ringleaders ended up pleading guilty to racketeering, narcotics, and weapons offenses. Even in the world of organized crime, there's no such thing as too big to fail. The puppet master. You might think being locked up in Pelican Bay would stop a gang leader in his tracks. For Danny Popeye Roman, it was just a change of scenery. His new office was a tiny concrete cell, and his day-to-day business was using hidden communication methods that even the tightest security couldn't crack. See, Danny didn't need email or text messages to send his orders. He had something way more reliable, a network of contacts and methods that kept information flowing. To anyone listening in, his communications might sound like an innocent conversation, but in reality, Danny was orchestrating a complex criminal operation from his cell. Now, you'd think being in the most secure wing of a supermax prison would put a damper on things, but for Danny Roman, it barely slowed him down. Somehow, information kept flowing in and out of that cell, and it wasn't just information making its way past those prison walls. Money was flowing too. Danny's prison account was suspiciously flush. We're talking about $24,000 that got seized, all suspected of coming from his street operations. That's a lot of cash for a guy who's supposed to be cut off from the outside world. But here's the tricky part. How do you prove a man behind bars is running the show? That's the headache prosecutors had to deal with. It's not like they could catch Danny in the act of committing crimes on the street. He had the perfect alibi. He was locked up 24/7. Danny Roman showed that physical freedom isn't always necessary to hold on to power in the streets. From his cell, he was still the boss, still calling the shots. It's a testament to how deep his influence ran and how sophisticated his communication network was. But you gotta wonder, how long could he keep this up? In the criminal underworld, there is always someone looking to move up the ladder. How long before someone decided it was time to take control for themselves? In a world where power is everything, even the most secure prison cell can't protect you forever. The Takedown, Operation Roman Empire. Operation Roman Empire in 2012 was the Fed's big move against the Roman family. They used RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, to go after the whole network. This wasn't just about drugs and extortion. It was about dismantling an entire criminal dynasty that had its grip on South LA for years. When the dust settled, 25 out of 29 defendants ended up with convictions. Manuel Valencia, a harpy shot caller, got 27 years in federal prison for racketeering and drug trafficking. But he was small potatoes compared to the real target, Vianna Roman. In addition to outlining her control of the Harpies and other gangs in South Los Angeles, the indictment alleges specific criminal acts, including the distribution of methamphetamine, cocaine, crack cocaine, and heroin, the murder of a gang member who owed a debt to another gang member, robberies targeting USC students, and conspiracies to commit murder, including a plot to kill a witness in a state court case against a member of another gang. The reign of Daddy's little girl as street boss was coming to an end. She faced the music and entered a guilty plea. It was a far cry from her days of running the family business from that little carniceria in South LA. The feds were not just locking up thugs. They were cutting off the head of the snake, taking out the brains of the operation. They finally dismantled a powerful family business operating in the underworld. But Danny Roman was still alive and well in prison. And in the world of organized crime, as long as the boss is still breathing, there's always a chance for a comeback. The feds might have won this round, but the war against gang violence, that's far from over. Operation Roman Empire was a big hit, but it wasn't the knockout punch they were hoping for. The fall of a kingpin. Danny Roman thought he was untouchable, even behind bars. But on June 10, 2020, his reign came to a sudden, violent end. It was a normal day at Corcoran State Prison, until it wasn't. Danny was there to get help at the substance abuse treatment facility and was out in the prison yard. At 10:44 a.m., 2 inmates approached Roman in the yard. They were his carnales, his brothers. But Raul Alvarado and Edward Cisneros had other plans. Alvarado, also known as Spy, from Lennox 13 gang and a Mexican Mafia member, was serving life for murder. Cisneros, meanwhile, was doing his own life sentence for murder. What happened next was quick and brutal. Roman never stood a chance. By 11:11 a.m., just 27 minutes later, it was all over. Danny Popeye Roman was pronounced dead. Multiple stab wounds to his face and body told the story of his final moments. The official report called it just another prison killing. But in the dark world of the Mexican Mafia, nothing's ever that simple. Was this a sanctioned hit from the higher-ups in La M, or was it a power play by ambitious underlings? In the prison yard, today's boss can easily become tomorrow's victim. Correctional officers tried to save Roman's life, but it was too late. The weapons, 2 makeshift prison knives, were recovered from the scene. Alvarado and Cisneros got shipped off to segregated housing faster than you can say lockdown. Danny Roman controlled a vast criminal network from behind bars for decades. He called shots that echoed through the streets of South LA. His word was law in multiple gangs. And in the end, all that power could not protect him in his own cell. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation didn't waste time launching an investigation. The Kings County District Attorney's Office got involved too. But solving a prison murder isn't easy, even when you know who did it. The code of silence runs deep. Roman's death sent shockwaves through the system. This wasn't just another inmate getting shanked. This was the fall of a kingpin, a man who had held on to power despite being locked away in one of California's toughest prisons. Corcoran State Prison, where Roman met his end, is no joke. It houses some of the most dangerous criminals in the state. Violence is part of daily life there. But even by Corcoran standards, the murder of a Mexican Mafia shot caller was big news. In the end, Danny Roman's story is a brutal reminder of how quickly fortunes can change in the criminal underworld. One minute you're on top, calling shots from a prison cell. The next, you're bleeding out on the yard, your empire crumbling right before your eyes. La M's lingering shadow. Danny Roman's death didn't cripple La M like you might expect. The Mexican Mafia has been around since 1957. Sure, Danny's exit left a power vacuum, but other shot callers were quick to step up. The Harpies gang is still out there, still slanging and running extortion rackets. The faces might have changed, but the game's still the same. Vianna Roman, Danny's daughter, is doing time in federal prison in Victorville. But in La M's world, 15 years is just a blip. She's still a player in the Harpies operations, proving once again that prison bars don't stop the flow of information. Matthew Buchner, a retired prison gang investigator, thinks Danny's murder could spark some internal power struggles in the Mexican Mafia. Rival factions might try to grab control, and if the hit wasn't sanctioned by La M's higher-ups, there could be some serious payback coming. But here's the thing about La M, they're in it for the long haul. They've been around for 67 years, outlasting countless leaders and federal takedowns. The fall of Danny Roman was just another chapter in their history. The feds might call Operation Roman Empire a win, but the reality on the ground tells a different story. That territory southwest of downtown LA and north of USC, still gang turf. The drug trade is still booming, and the extortion rackets are still running. In the end, La M's shadow still looms over Southern California, and somewhere in a prison cell, there is probably another Danny Roman in the making, ready to pick up where he left off. Outro. The fall of the Roman Empire didn't put an end to gang violence and prison control. It's a cycle that keeps repeating, like a stubborn weed that refuses to die. Vianna Roman's story is a stark example of how deep organized crime can sink its roots, entangling families and entire neighborhoods. Picture a daughter visiting her father in prison, not for quality time, but to receive orders for the streets. This pattern keeps repeating itself. As long as there are prisons and streets, people will try to control both. The real question is, what's the cost? We're talking about communities torn apart and kids growing up thinking this is normal. Even with the Romans out of the picture, the game continues. New players step up, new alliances form, but the core rules remain unchanged. It's a grim reminder that taking down one family or gang is just scratching the surface. The real challenge lies in breaking this cycle for good, and finding ways to prevent the next generation from falling into the same traps. Until we address the root causes, this story will keep playing out, with different names but the same devastating consequences. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to check out the history of the Harpies gang and their most famous member, click here. Peace.